is this an issue of this person being like not trusting, or is it an issue of this the person that they're dating like not being entirely honest or whatever? There's this idea of or. Like it's not or, it's a combination. Like if conflict avoidance on her part plus a lack of trust on your part results in like a lack of communication, which is like quite bad. Do y'all get that? In the past, if your partner has tried to communicate with you and the part of you that feels difficult to trust comes out, right? And you start getting paranoid. You may not like lash out at them in sort of an aggressive way, but you may like start to be like super passive aggressive. Where were you? What were you doing? I'm starting to think I don't respect myself. I have a fiance who recently went on a vacation. I found out later she was talking to a coworker the entire time she was gone. Once she got back, she started hanging out with him for 5 to 8 hours at a time while lying to me about where she was, even one time overnight. I have my own issues with trust and feel like I spend too much time living in my partner's life. So I found out about this through checking her location. I confronted her with this, and she said she felt like she needed some space and always felt watched around me. I don't completely deny this because I feel like I have a really hard time trusting, and she is a compulsive liar due to her own childhood traumas. She said that she is not cheating, but talking to this person helps her have conversations to work out her past traumas. He has had similar traumas he has overcome, and that I am emotionally closed off. Not completely true. Where I'm starting to have issues is that I do somewhat believe her that she is not cheating, but let her know that I need openness and honesty if this is going to work. She quickly disrespected this by lying about where she was 2 days later, to again talk with this guy for 5 or so hours. I don't know if I am the abuser or the one getting abused. Is me checking in on where she's at and glancing over her shoulder when she's on the phone causing her to feel a lack of privacy the real issue? Or am I just getting my boundaries steamrolled and letting her lie to me by blaming myself for this? I'm starting to get creeping doubts that I don't respect myself enough to enforce my boundaries and enact consequences for when she crosses them, like leaving the relationship. She doesn't want to lie, but has extreme conflict avoidance that makes telling the truth extremely hard. One of these things she is trying to fix. A recurring thought that I have is that because I have these unhealthy trust issues, that I deserve this, or that even if I break this off, it will just happen to the next relationship. Reflecting these past 2 weeks, I believe my invasiveness, untrusting nature is what caused my relationship previously to deteriorate and end. Do I try to work this out with her? How do I enforce or communicate my needs of being open and honest to work on my own issues when being open and honest is one of her core issues? I want to make it clear that I do not condone my behavior. Even if she does lie, I need to work on myself and to not immediately jump to infidelity just because she is talking to someone of the opposite sex. This situation has just been a wake-up call that these deep-rooted issues need to be addressed and worked on. I think this answered the question. Right? This is fantastic. So the situation is unfortunate. But the first thing that I want to point out is that relationship problems are not usually a me thing or a them thing. So we have this kind of idea. Our mind tells us, is me checking on her where she's at and glancing over her shoulder when she's on the phone causing her to feel a lack of privacy? Or am I getting my boundaries steamrolled and letting her lie by blaming blah, 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 right? There's this idea of or. That is this an issue of this person being like not trusting? Or is it an issue of this the person that they're dating like not being entirely honest or whatever? Like it's not or, it's a combination. So this is what I want y'all to understand. So like a relationship is not something on you and something on her. That's not how it is. It's a combination of what each of you bring to the table. So I bring a certain set of like thinking and conditions and reasoning and stuff like that. And then my partner brings another set of stuff up, right? So, and then like these two things blend together and you create something new that is like half from you and half from her. Now, this relationship to me, the one thing that I can say is that I don't think that this sounds like a healthy relationship moving in the right direction. Now, some people may say, oh, just break up with them. Other people may say, oh, no, like it's on you. No, I don't think it's either or. So if you're in a relationship where, you don't trust your partner, that can create sort of a situation where if you don't trust them, they may paradoxically feel like they have to keep things from you. So if she tells you, yeah, I'm going to go meet a coworker of mine, and then like that sort of sets you off in some way, your partner may decide that the simplest thing to do is just not tell you, because then she doesn't have to deal with like your reaction. Now, if you have conflict avoidance there, like if conflict avoidance on her part plus a lack of trust on your part results in like a lack of communication, which is like quite bad. Do y'all get that? So if I don't trust, any lack of communication is going to, like any question mark in the relationship, I'm going to see the worst options. So any uncertainty becomes a doomsday scenario for someone who has difficulty trusting. On the flip side, if someone's conflict avoidant, anything negative or positive, there's all kinds of stuff that's going to be more question marks, because the conflict avoidant person does not want to have a conversation, is troubled by the conversation, doesn't want to get things out in the open. It doesn't even mean that there's anything to hide, right? It's not necessarily that they're doing something wrong, but conflict avoidance leads to a lack of communication. A lack of communication leads to question marks. And if you have trust issues, question marks are going to get translated in your brain as infidelity. So this is like absolutely a scenario where these two things are like combining in a terrible way. Does that make sense? So what do you do about this situation? The first is that I commend this person for this level of insight where they're like, I think the last reason my relationship deteriorated was like a lack of trust. And so in the past, if your partner has tried to communicate with you and the part of you that feels difficult to trust comes out, right? And you start getting paranoid. You may not like lash out at them in sort of an aggressive way, but you may like start to be like super passive aggressive. Where were you? What were you doing? And even though they say things like you don't believe it, and they see that you don't believe it, and they see that you're upset, and they're conflict avoidant and they don't want to make you upset. So then they conclude like, because even if they weren't doing anything wrong, they can't keep you from getting upset because you have trust issues. Does that make sense? Because how are they supposed to reassure you if you don't have trust? Right? Does that make sense? So if they can't reassure you, then they stop talking to you. And then that exacerbates the problem. So this is the kind of thing where I would say a couple things. First is you should work on this trust issue yourself, right? This is something that you need to work through. If it's a pattern that extends beyond this relationship, it's something you should work on yourself. Second thing is y'all should probably work on this together as well. In terms of like, help me. And what you've got to do is be super open-minded. So when you sit down with your partner, don't try to judge or convince or even share your perspective at all. Just try to understand your partner's perspective. Okay? And what you want to do is say things like, help me understand what makes it difficult for you to tell me when you're hanging out with this person. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm genuinely trying to understand, like, can you help me understand what goes on in your head? Help me understand how you make the decisions you make. I'm not saying they're wrong. I just want to try to understand them so that I can like make my peace with it. Right? And listen to what they have to say. The other thing is, frankly, some of this stuff is a little bit sus. I'm just going to toss that out there. Like spending the night somewhere and sort of being a little sus about it, like that's really kind of weird. So, I think your paranoia is maybe a little bit justified. But at the same time, like, they're just warning signs here, right? Like, that's what this is. And so just because there's a warning sign doesn't mean that there's a problem yet. But this is the kind of thing where I don't think this relationship is heading in the right direction. So you need to work on your stuff yourself. You probably also need to work on this with your partner. But it's not like an either-or kind of situation. And that's where if you lay a boundary with someone and you don't enforce it, all you're really reinforcing is the concept that your boundaries don't need to be respected. So if I like tell someone, I'm like, if you don't call me in the next hour, I'm never talking to you again. And they call 2 hours later and I answer the phone, what am I reinforcing for that person? All I'm reinforcing is that you don't have to respect my boundaries. Now, this is where you got to be a little bit careful, because what this may mean is like, I'm going to teach these people to respect my boundaries. If you don't call me the next hour, I'm never talking to you again. And since they called me 2 hours later, like, I ain't answering the phone. I'm going to text them, F you. You didn't call me in the hour. Blocked, bitch. The other part of this is you can't set stupid boundaries. Like, don't sign yourself up for a stupid boundary that you then have to reinforce. You guys get that? So never set a boundary when you are emotionally upset. Like, never do that. Voice your frustration, but don't set a boundary. Boundaries should be set with a clear head, with also an understanding of what is actually enforceable. Like, what are you actually going to do? I'm never going to talk to you again. Stupid. You're not going to do that. So don't say that. Right? And then what happens is, like, it just creates lots of frustration. When you set an unreasonable boundary on someone, they don't respect it, you don't respect it, and then, like, it just gets frustrating for everyone involved. So think carefully about which boundaries you're going to set. And chances are you're going to set lighter boundaries than you think you deserve, which is totally fine. Boundaries should be set based on enforcement, not what should be. This is something we talk about a lot in parent coaching. We spend 12 weeks teaching parents how to set proper boundaries on their kids. And, like, it works really well once you think a little bit. Parents are like, no playing games after 10 p.m. Are you up after 10 p.m.? Are you going to watch the kid and make sure they don't play games after 10 p.m.? No, they're just supposed to listen. Well, they're not going to. And all you're going to teach them is that they don't have to respect what you say. So don't set a boundary for no games after 10 p.m., but then they're going to play games after 10 p.m. Yeah, so you've got two options. Either they can play games after 10 p.m. and not respect what you say, or they can play games after 10 p.m. and you don't set a boundary on them and shoot yourself in the foot that you're not going to enforce anyway. They're going to play games after 10 p.m. either way. It's just, do you want them to respect what you say or not? You guys get that? So don't set boundaries that you're not willing to enforce. So as for what to do in this situation, I mean, I think it's like, it's challenging, you know, because even what's happening is I'm seeing an emotional wedge being driven between these two people. And when you have an emotional wedge and you have someone who gets into the habit of not telling you where they are or lying about it or things like that, and you have someone who's like habitually paranoid, then you're going to, I mean, this is where affairs and breakups come from, right? So, like, she's got you, who's paranoid and looking over her shoulder all the time, who she can't emotionally connect with. And then she's got this other guy who's available and easy and fun to hang out with and that she emotionally connects with. And, like, where do you think that's going? Right? Now, that may terrify you, but, like, acknowledge where it's going so that you can alter its course. Sticking your head in the sand and, like, ignoring the problem is not going to help. It's easy to do that. It's easy to, like, be afraid of what's going to happen and say, like, oh, like, but, like, don't, you know, you should, when you create a situation with your partner where you cause them a lot of headache and someone else doesn't, that's like a dangerous situation to be in. Now, we're not saying that that entitles your partner to cheat on you. Hopefully what they would do is break up with you first. But that's just kind of how it is, right? So, like, the relationships are about people who support each other and care about each other and enjoy each other's company. And if that's no longer what the relationship is, like, you don't necessarily need to hold on to the relationship. The other thing to say is that, like I was saying, this is a combination of two things, right? So you may just need to be with someone who is more open to communicating and is more able to reassure you and is, like, more, like, able to do that emotionally. Now, that could be this person, but then she's got to grow into that. So this is where, like, a lot of times what people will sort of assume is that you should be with someone who ... But, like, that doesn't mean that you have to break up with your current person. And your partner deserves to be with someone who's a little bit more trusting. So you can grow, each person in a relationship can grow into what the relationship needs. In fact, that's how it works. Because if the two of you are dating, you're both 18, you're going to be different people and have different needs at 24. And there are going to be different people and have different needs at 30. And there are going to be different people and have different needs at 36. So you always have to grow and change into what the relationship needs. And when you're sort of committed to the relationship, that's what that commitment means. It means growing and changing into what the relationship needs.